number one, he said, is to be more aggressive, especially in tournaments. You want to touch base on that, or you want me to?
I don't know anything about being aggressive.
Liar.
The main thing to be more aggressive in the tournaments, one of the things you're really going to need to have in your bag of tricks before you can start getting too aggressive, unless you just want to play lucky type poker, is you really need to have a really good feel for it. Now, some people call it instinct, but it's not necessarily instinct. It's something that you learn just from playing over and over and over again and paying attention while you're at the table. You want to learn people's tendencies. You want to pay attention to flop texture, what types of hands could be out there against you, and you want to really have a firm grasp on all this stuff, and then you can start trying to push people off of pots. As aggressive as I play, if I'm in a pot, I'm not going to bluff at a 7-8 jack with two suited cards on there. That's going to be a hand that I'm gonna lay off of a little bit, or like a 10 jack 8 or something like that, because there's just way too many hands that they could have to call me with. But you give me a ragged flop, and I'm gonna push at it almost every time. You really need to focus on the types of boards that you'll see multiple callers on. And see what type of boards come out that when one person bets, everybody folds. I mean, that's those types of boards. You want to learn to recognize them and be that person that bets. Every once in a while, you're going to bump into a hand, but again, that comes right into the people reading skills. You need to realize when you're beat and when they're not going to let go of the hand, and really pay attention to the bet sizes that people will call for and won't call for with what types of hands. Once you get all of that down, being aggressive is just a matter of, taking a really deep breath and making yourself do what you're supposed to be doing. You just don't quite have the heart to do it. You've also, is it Amir Vahidi's quote? You got to be willing to die in order to live. In order to live, you got to be willing to die.
I think it was from Umberto, actually.
It was probably Umberto, yeah. But that's one of those things. You start playing really aggressive. You're gonna get caught speeding sometimes. You're gonna get paid off quite a bit more of the time, but you've got to know that that's just one of the side effects of playing that type of game. Is you're gonna bump into the nuts when you're betting. But playing aggressive is it gets back more to just knowing what you want to do with every bet. Are you putting that bet out there hoping everybody folds? Well, if you are, make sure you design the amount of the bet around that. If you're trying to add value to the pot, design the value of the bet around that. It's just one of those things you just have to make a conscious decision to be more aggressive.
I would agree with that. The big thing in that also is based on where you are in the tournament as well. If you're getting really aggressive in the beginning of the tournament, how do you play in the beginning of the tournament? Do you still play your aggressive, or do you wait until the blinds get up a little bit higher?
Well, it depends in more what type of tournament it is.
I guess it would depend on how the table's playing a little bit as well.
Yeah,
if they're going to let you run over them, you're going to run over them. But
yeah, if they're being all-in maniacs and stuff like that, I'm gonna definitely sit back. But I'm not gonna necessarily go into my aggressive mode until I've got a pretty decent feel for how everybody's playing around the table, and the aggressive zones on the table, I guess, would be one thing. You're going to find when the button's at a certain position on the table, there's more action, just because maybe you've got somebody that always calls an early position, which I'm sure most people notice. And if not, if you haven't noticed, take notice of it. When you get somebody that limps in an early position, that usually opens the pot for a multi-way pot, because people feel a big pot coming on and it hasn't been raised, so everybody wants to take a peek. You need to realize when that's happening compared to where the button is, how often it's getting down to just the blinds. If the button is in seat 7 and players 8 and 9 are getting a lot of heads-up blind play, that means that's a real cold spot on the table for the button, and that's going to be a pot or a spot for the button that you're going to want to steal the blinds from, regardless of your position. It doesn't matter if you're in early position or late position in that hand. If it's continually folding around when the button's near that position of the table, take it. But for the most part, early in the tournaments, I want to get a good feel for my table and just know who I'm going to be able to push and who I'm not going to be able to push. I don't necessarily want to be in there, with a lot of people that are trying to double up in the first round. I'm going to try and see some flops real cheap because if I am able to double up early in that tournament, I'm going to have a lot easier time pushing my table around. But at the same time, if it's going to be a huge gamble at the beginning, I'd rather have a little more control of my fate and wait until things calm down a bit.
Sure. And that goes into our next topic, which is patience. Was the next thing that Kipper would thinks that he needs to improve on to make his game better, and that is a very tricky one. I mean, especially even more in live play than online. When you're online, to play poker correctly, you're supposed to be completely watching your table and learning the ins and outs of all the players and what they do and what their tendencies are and those types of things, which can, if you really are studying all of that, then you can, sorry, got sidetracked by some other stuff going on in here. If you are, really studying all those players and keeping mental notes and those types of things, so at least you're working your brain, so you can be a little bit more patient, and you're not just sitting there folding your cards and staring off at the space or watching TV and those types of things. So that's going to also relate to Kipper's third one here, once we get to that as well, and different ways to keep yourself occupied in order to keep the patience level down. But the main thing is, especially early in the tournament, the blinds are 10 and 20 or something along this lines. People are going all in for $1,500 pre-flop into a $30 pot, even if you have pocket eights, that's not a position to gamble in. I see it all the time. Somebody goes all in for 1,500 chips into a $30 pot, and somebody will call them with pocket eights or sevens or sixes or something along these lines. There's no reason to do that unless your whole motivation for the day is to gamble. Because at best you're going to be, normally at best you're going to be a 50-50 shot to win the hand if they have two overcards. Worst case scenario, maybe they got an overpair. They got pocket tens. Now you're 4-1 underdog. So there's no reason to gamble there. And it's a little different than if the blinds are 50 and 100 and somebody raises it up to 3 or 400, and then you have your 1,500 and you re-raise with those pocket eights and make it 1,500 to go all in. Now you get some fold equity in there as well. So maybe if they call you, you might be on a coin flip if they got ace king or something like this. But a lot of times they might fold, and so you got a better chance of taking down the pot because you have two ways to win it. They fold, or you just have the best hand at the end. But patience is definitely a key. I know that in an aggressive game like Lake of Fire plays, he's being patient at the same time as he's being aggressive. He's not raising his Jack 2 offsuit, or even his Jack 2 suited. I should even say that in there. And he's going to be playing workable hands. 6-7 suited, or the ace kings and the pocket pairs and those types of things. And he's going to play a lot of position to where he's not going to come in under the gun raising his 6-7 suited or something along that lines. He's going to...
No.
Maybe. Not quite as often. On a volatile table, you're not going to do that if you're getting a lot of callers and those types of things quite as often as if you had that same hand in late position. You're going to like playing it in late position a lot better.